welcome back to Cottoverdi. My name's Annette and today I am harvesting my Honesty or Lunaria, and I'm going to show you what it looks like, tell you a bit about it, and also I'm going to be sowing seeds so that I have more for next year. Now if you have Lunaria or Honesty in your garden already, then you possibly don't need to sow seeds because it self-seeds really readily, which is fantastic. But I have a couple of different varieties that I want, rather than just Lunaria annua, which is the purple mauvey variety, which is gorgeous. But I would like a few different varieties, and there are some on the market now. So I'm going to be sowing those seeds today. I'm going to show you in this really quick video how easy it is to grow Lunaria, how fantastic it looks, the seed pods look as dried flowers, and also just how easy it is to sow them. So come along with me as we do that. Do you feel like my June front garden has gone over quite quickly this year? And I'm not sure why that is, but there are still some really pretty things here. Let me show you as I'm harvesting the pretty flowers that I've got in the front garden here. So right behind, growing up this wall here, I've got a clematis. This clematis is called Susico. I haven't tied it in particularly well this year, so it's kind of all flopping down and it should be growing up a bit more. And in fact, I can see a dead branch up there. I'm not sure what's going on, but this is a really good clematis. It flowers beautifully every single year for me, and it's just a really nice bright spark of white. Then I've got a white veronica in front of it. This is looking a little bit scraggly now. And look at this gorgeous penstemon. I think it's garnet here at the front. I've got the white veronica at the back with the clematis Susico, and then over here I've got some achillea or yarrow that's just starting to bloom, and I think this is the summer berries mix. And then at the back here we can see this is the Honesty. These are the seed pods that I'm about to harvest, so let's go and do that. Standing here next to my sceptred Isle roses, and I can see how much deadheading I've got to do. But before I do that, let me show you. So this is one Honesty branch, and look at the seed heads. If you haven't seen Honesty before, so they start off green and you can let them dry on the plant green. But what I've found over the years is that the more we let them dry on the plant, the more mottled they get by the weather, and then they just don't look quite as smart when we come to dry them and take off the outer coating. I find that they fare better because they get a bit bashed about by the wind and the rain and things like that. So if we harvest them when they're green and then hang them upside down to dry them ourselves in a cool dark room, then actually they produce much smarter looking seed pods for us to use in our interior decor or in the autumn or Christmas or whenever, because the seed pods aren't damaged by the wind and the rain. Because let me see if I can find you some that have been damaged by the wind and the rain. I'll find you some scruffier looking ones. Hang on. Okay, so the longer we leave them on the plant, the scruffier they're going to get, because the wind will knock them around, the slugs will get to them, and the rain will damage them as well. And then what happens is you get sort of these little damaged pods here. So there are a few that are damaged, and this is the outer coating, so it is, you do peel it off, but what happens is, that's a leaf actually, you know, you lose some from the ends of the stems, and some of them just sort of break in half, and so it's just not as, it's not as pretty if you leave them to dry on the plant, but you absolutely can do that. But if we harvest them when they're green, I really have found that they produce a better final result. It's prettier and more elegant and just smarter, and you just lose less because they're fuller, so there's a lot less that's lost. Does that make sense? I have left in the flower bed over there, I have left some. I didn't pick everything because I kind of want them to self-seed there. And in fact, all of those are self-seeded. So the ones that I had this year are self-seeded from previous years. So I do leave some so that they can scatter their own seed and grow themselves. And one of the reasons I do that is because I have found that slugs and snails adore this plant. So we lose a lot of seedlings to the slugs and snails. In fact, even the ones that I plant out, I'm going to oversow just to mitigate any that are eaten. I am just quickly going to deadhead this rose because that's really bothering me. I can't leave it without just getting my snips to it quickly. This rose here is a David Austin rose called Little White Pet, and I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And then just at the back here, I've got some Aruncus leaning over with its creamy fronds, and I just think it looks so pretty. There's a little bit of self-seeded Lunaria there, that little purple spike. So I am just going to quickly show you how I prep the cuttings of my Honesty seed pods when they start like this, so that I end up with something like this, which is just the most beautiful pearlescent, really like mother of pearl, almost, you know, translucent, beautiful little arrangements that we can make. I basically tidy everything up before I hang it up to dry, and we hang everything upside down to dry in a cool dark room. That's the best place. So where there are like little bits on the end, I just chop that off because I don't want to have to worry about little bits on the end breaking off and creating a mess. So I just go around and I take off anything that looks, you know, damaged. But what we do is we leave them, even if they look like this, like a little bit mottled, because sometimes when you take the outer casing off, it's actually okay underneath, it's not too bad. But the other thing that I also do, getting distracted, the other thing that I also do before I hang them up to dry is I take off the leaves. So if the slugs and snails have left any of the green foliage, I just peel that off because it becomes really messy and crinkly when it's dry, and I don't like it. I find it a lot easier to take it all off now before I hang it up to dry. Then there's like a bare branch here, so I'm just going to take that off too. And this one is broken, so I'm just going to take that off. And, you know, these things happen, firstly when we're picking them, but also, you know, when they're out in the elements, obviously they're going to get beaten up a bit. I think I've said that already. So there will be broken bits, but you're just not going to notice when they're all in a big group looking beautiful and mother of pearly. You won't notice tiny imperfections so much. So it's kind of tidy now. I've taken off all the scraggly bits on the ends of the stems, and I've taken off all the leaves that grow along the center of the stem, and I'm not going to worry about anything that's black like that, because that may well just be the outer casing, which we take off. And I have got a video on my channel about drying flowers, and I show you how to take the casing off if you want to check that out, or you can just wait until I do this in a few months' time when they're dry, and I'll show you how to do that again. And so once I've done that to all of them, I hang them up in fairly small bunches. So I've got about, I've got 4 here, and I just tie some twine around them and I hang them up like this, as I said, in a cool dark room, preferably where there's airflow. Now, I have tried to dry them in my sheds behind me before in the past. They're quite dark and I thought they were quite cool, but actually what happened was, because I hung them up against a wall, I just hung them on pegs on the wall, I think there wasn't enough airflow and so they went mouldy. So my advice is not to do that, but to find somewhere that you can hang them. Now, I'm lucky enough to have a storeroom that I can use, and I've got one of those you know, portable hanging rails, and I just hang all my dried flowers up on that. But you could suspend something from the ceiling or just find somewhere, a garage, something like that, but make sure that there's good airflow so that they dry out really nicely. Everything's crashing to the ground. So that's what I do to tidy them up. Now I'm just going to sow my seeds. I'll bring you along, tell you which varieties I'm sowing. So Lunaria or honesty seeds are quite large, really easy to handle, and the seedlings grow into quite large seedlings. So I don't use the normal 8-cell trays that I use. I sow my Lunaria seedlings into 9cm pots, 3-inch pots, and that way I know that they're going to have sufficient moisture as seedlings. If we sow them into tiny little cells, it's really hard for them to get enough moisture to sustain them, because they really are quite big seedlings, which is a good thing. And what I also do is I sow a few into each one, because they don't necessarily like root disturbance, and so if you sow a few seeds into each cell or each pot, then we can just snip off the ones that we don't want and just keep one in there. And as I said, I do oversow because I find that the slugs and the snails just, they munch away. So I go a little bit mad and sow as many as I've got room for, just so that I've always got backups. I sow into my ordinary multi-purpose peat-free compost that I always use. I don't use seed compost or anything like that. And these self-seed so readily in the ground that actually I think they're really easy to germinate. They'll germinate in about 7 to 14 days. Now, when I was looking online, I did find one of the websites said that they will flower from seed to flower in 85 to 95 days. I'm sowing mine in June, end of June, this year, to have flowers next spring. So they tend to flower in sort of April time for me. I have never found that they flower this year, but maybe other people have tried sowing earlier and have had flowers towards the end of the year. They germinate best at between 18 and 20 degrees. So we've just had a heat wave, but it's actually cooled down remarkably quickly, overnight in fact. So we had really hot days the last few days and I didn't sow anything, but now actually is a good time for me to sow because it is about 20 degrees maximum at the moment during the day. So I think these are going to germinate really easily. Now, in the past, I have also put my Lunaria seeds, my honesty seeds, in the fridge for 2 weeks to speed up germination, but I've also heard that that isn't necessary either, and we can just sow the seeds and they should germinate really easily. So I haven't put mine in the fridge this year, and I'm going to see whether my germination is just as good this year as it's been in previous years. Just had a coughing fit, sorry. So I'm going to do an experiment for you. I shall be the test case, and I'm going to sow my seeds without putting them in the fridge. Maybe you guys do that all the time anyway, but for anyone who's trying this for the first time, let's see whether this works or whether we need to put the seeds in the fridge to get a really good germination. Let me tell you which varieties I'm sowing today. So I'm sowing Lunaria annua, which is the gorgeous purple one that we see on roadsides and things like that. It really does self-seed very readily, and that in fact is the one that I had in my garden this year, because the seeds that I sowed last year, they weren't looked after very well, and so I got really good germination. There's just the seedlings died in a heat wave. So I didn't have anything that I sowed last year I didn't have this year to plant out, so everything that I've got is self-seeded. So the seed packet says that it grows to 75 centimeters, and I have some saved seeds from previous years, so I'm also going to be sowing those to see whether the germination on those is just as good as the ones in my seed packet. I'm also going to sow the white version, Alba. So this is exactly the same as the mauve version, just white, and I really want some white ones this year, so I'm really hoping that loads of these germinate and I can have them all over my garden. The other one that I'm sowing is called Ched Glow, which has got really lovely dark foliage and deep pink flowers, and this one grows to 1 metre tall apparently, so we'll see whether that happens. I have never successfully managed to get this from seedling to plant stage. It's either died in a heat wave or been eaten by slugs and snails. I really hope this year I have more success, so fingers crossed for Ched Glow. And then the last one I'm sowing is a perennial, and this one is called Lunaria rediviva, which is perennial honesty. Apparently it comes back every year. It's just like any other perennial, and this one's got purplish flowers and will grow to 90 centimetres, so supposedly slightly taller than the biennial versions. Anyway, I'm sowing them all today. It's the last week in June, and I think that we can sow these probably for another few weeks here in this country, and then it gets too warm, supposedly, if that ever happens in England. Then it gets too warm, and then the next time we could sow them would be sort of September, October time, sometime in the fall, so that they go through the winter. But the reason I'm sowing mine in June is because I really want to get nice sized plants before I plant them out in the garden, in the hope that they get through the winter better and can withstand the onslaught of the slugs and snails, because if they're really small plants, you know, one little munch from a slug and it's gone, but if they're bigger plants that we put in the ground in September, October, then hopefully they'll withstand that onslaught. So I'm just going to place the seeds on the top of the compost and cover with a sprinkling of compost. So they want to be planted, you know, 2 to 3 millimeters deep, really not deep. You could just sort of push them. In fact, I may just push them into the soil a little bit, and then I'm going to water them in really well, and then I'm going to put them in my cold frame so I can keep an eye on them. They don't need to be protected. You could just place them, you know, up against a wall of your house or something, somewhere in the garden. We can just go and sprinkle these in the garden. In fact, I've got so many seeds that I may well just go and sprinkle some in the garden and see what happens, because I've saved loads of seeds in the past from when I pick them and dry the seed pods. I just save those seeds. So let's get sowing. That's it for today. I really hope you've had fun with me as I harvested my honesty and also showed you sowing for next year. I think these are really fun things to do at this time of year. The gardens are looking spectacular in June, but it's really nice to plan ahead for next year, and I really enjoy sowing biennials. I've got loads more to sow, so I'll bring you along for those in future videos. If you'd like to see that, then do subscribe to my channel, and if you've enjoyed the video, then give it a like. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.